Hi everyone. Welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley, and this is a show where we are slowly cooking our way through all of the food from my childhood. Today we're diving back into our series dedicated to deconstructing Americanized Chinese cuisine with a shot at the legendary orange chicken from Panda Express. For those new to this channel, in this series we have been taking apart iconically Americanized dishes from Chinese cuisine and then seeing what it might look like if we were to cook the dish through the lens of slightly more traditional Chinese wok cooking. And yes, for those following along, this is in fact the longest running series on this channel, and we have somehow not gotten to the single most iconic dish on the Panda Express menu, and that is because Panda Express actually published the recipe to this dish on Tasty not too long ago, and if I'm being absolutely honest, it doesn't sound very good. Not because it's not authentically Chinese or whatever the hell that means, but honestly it just kinda sounds really bland, so I'm gonna do my absolute best to stick to the rubric of the task at hand today and not stray too far from our original inspiration, while also coming up with something that, tastes good. Panda Express's orange chicken iconically features the use of orange juice and vinegar along with a healthy portion of sugar, which combine to create that iconically sweet and savory sauce base that we all know and love. Then finally, cause I guess it's kind of the whole point of this series, I also thought it would be fun to take a shot at reimagining what orange chicken might actually look like if it were a part of more traditional Asian cuisine. For our attempt today, this turned out to be a Japanese-inspired orange miso chicken karaage done with a bit of mandarin orange in lieu of that orange juice. Okay, so let's get into it.
We don't have to rush when you're alone with me. I feel it coming. I feel it coming, baby. I feel it coming. I feel it coming, baby.
Okay, so kicking things off here first with our Panda Express version, we're starting off with some aromatic veggies for our glaze. This is 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, followed by 1 inch or about 1 tablespoon of finely minced ginger. And since we're still doing our absolute best to stick to the Panda Express inspiration, that's really gonna be all of the vegetables in our dish today. I imagine that the simplicity of this dish has something to do with the fact that Panda Express typically would serve this dish as a part of a 2 or 3 entree meal, so in addition to the orange chicken, you might also have a side of fried rice, chow mein, dumplings, and etc. Moving on to our glaze next. Now, conveniently enough for us, the official Tasty's recipe for this dish gives us a pretty solid starting point for what this glaze should be, which is largely going to center around the use of vinegar, orange juice, and sugar. So, kicking things off here first, this is 4 tablespoons or a 1/4 cup each of soy sauce and rice vinegar. The Tasty's recipe calls for distilled white vinegar, which I literally have only ever used to clean my bathtub, so our rice vinegar substitute is going to be a little bit less abrasive and a little more sweet than distilled white is. Next up is a 1/4 cup of orange juice and a single tablespoon of sesame oil, both of which are again coming from the Tasty's official recipe as well. I had my doubts, but I actually thought that the orange juice worked out pretty well for us, since the Minute Maid orange juice that we're adding here has a good amount of sugar added, which really just sort of leans into the sweet qualities that we're already developing. So, rounding out that sweetness is also going to be another 4 tablespoons or a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, which of course you can dial up or down to taste, although for what it's worth, the Panda Express orange chicken is iconically very sweet. Finally, rounding this out is what should be 2 tablespoons of red chili flake, as in the stuff that you put on top of pizzas. I know that this is also famously an element to the Panda Express orange chicken, but I just couldn't help myself. This is instead 2 tablespoons of chili crisp oil, which is essentially red chili flake that has been steeped in an aromatic chili oil. This is going to add for us a lot of those iconic Chinese spice fragrances to our dish here, like star anise, Szechuan peppercorn, cinnamon, and really anything that you might associate with Chinese 5-spice. Moving on to my chicken next, this is 2 medium chicken thighs that I'm large dicing so that we may bread our bite-sized pieces of chicken here. I'm setting these aside while we set up our breading station next. This is 2 eggs whisked to combine in my first bowl, followed by a 1/4 cup each of AP flour and cornstarch in my second bowl. Then next we're doing a bit of wet hand, dry hand to avoid the dreaded batter claw, or in other words, that's my left hand handling the wet ingredients and my right hand handling the dry ingredients to avoid clumped up batter sticking to my hands too much, like so. Over on the stove, I have my fryer heating up at 350 degrees F, then I'm adding in my chicken about 15 pieces at a time, keeping a close eye on the temperature of my oil and making sure that it doesn't drop below 325 or so. I'm frying these in batches until golden brown for about 5 minutes, then removing to a drier rack to cool while we get to work on our glaze next. Back over on the stove, I've removed my fryer oil, then I'm adding another 4 tablespoons of peanut oil and, as always, long yao for that nice non-stick surface. Then going in here first is my garlic and ginger, which we're blooming for about 15 seconds until nice and fragrant before adding in my glaze. We're letting this reduce by about 30% or so, or in other words, until it reaches a thick and syrup-like consistency before adding our fried chicken back to the wok and tossing to combine. Now, I'll warn you now that this bit takes a little bit of experience and intuition to get right. We don't want that glaze to over-reduce or else the sugars will start to burn. But we also want to make sure that it's not too loose either, or else we'll be stuck reducing it with the chicken still in the wok and we'll end up with soggy fried chicken, which is also no good. So take your time and don't rush this step because it's probably going to be the trickiest part of the whole dish. Once our chicken is nice and coated, we're removing this all from heat, finishing it all with some fresh orange zest, and we're ready to eat. Alright, so I know that we took some liberties here in a couple of spots, especially with that chili crisp oil, but I gotta tell you though that this is gonna beat the pants off of any Panda Express orange chicken that you've ever had. I think the balance of acids and sugars that we involved play really nicely with each other to complement and spotlight that orange juice, which if you're like me, I was also kind of skeptical about using orange juice in a stir fry too, but again, I think it works out really well once it's been cooked and reduced. Then I also thought that the use of that chili oil in lieu of the chili flake worked really well in staying fairly true to our original inspiration, while still also significantly adding aromatics and heat to the dish in a way that feels a little bit like how a more traditional Chinese stir-fry might come together. But for those ready to do a bit of experimenting, I personally am very excited for this orange miso chicken karaage. For those following along, this is gonna borrow a lot from the garlic miso chicken karaage that we did a few months back, which uses a dry miso powder to create a nice miso coating to our chicken. Then we're also going to assemble this with a bit of juice and zest from some mandarin oranges in lieu of the orange juice as well for some fresh squeezed goodness. Okay, so let's get into it. Alright, so as with our first attempt, we're still starting off with some aromatic veggies here, which is going to be 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, followed by 1 inch or about 1 tablespoon of fine minced ginger. I'm going to go ahead and toss this right into my mixing bowl for my chicken marinade, along with 4 tablespoons of soy sauce and a single tablespoon of miso paste that I'm whisking until combined. Rounding this out is going to be about 2 tablespoons or the juice of half of 1 mandarin orange, passed through a sieve to catch our seeds. Finally, I'm switching out my board so that we may large dice another 2 medium chicken thighs. Go ahead and ignore this initial potato starch coating here, which was fully an accident and you should not do for your own attempts. Whoops. Next up, in a separate bowl, I'm assembling my orange miso aioli, which I was feeling lazy for and just used plain jarred mayo, about a half cup's worth. If you're looking for it, we also did assemble this aioli from scratch in our garlic miso chicken recipe a few months back, but I gotta say that the difference is fairly negligible. In any case though, I'm combining this with a single teaspoon of garlic powder, followed by the juice of another half of 1 mandarin orange and a single tablespoon of honey. Rounding this out is going to be a half teaspoon of thyme plus a pinch of kosher salt to taste. Then I'm whisking this all until a smooth aioli forms. 30 minutes later, we're circling back to our chicken, which we're going to bread in a Japanese chicken karaage style with potato starch. Personally, my favorite part of any chicken karaage are the crispy, craggly bits that form when the potato starch clumps up, so I love helping this along with a double breading. I'm starting off with a first initial coating of about a half cup's worth of potato starch that I'm loosely tossing in my chicken to combine. You'll notice that we've got a pretty good start here already, but then just for kicks, I'm gonna set up another half cup dredge of potato starch and then coat each piece of chicken a second time individually. This is really going to maximize all of those craggly bits of breading in our fry coming up. Over on the stove, I have my fryer heating up once again at 350 degrees F. Then we're adding our chicken in, about 15 pieces or so at a time, and once again making sure that our temperature doesn't drop below 325 degrees F or so to ensure that we get a nice crispy piece of fried chicken coming out. I'm frying these up for about 5 minutes until golden brown, then removing to a large mixing bowl so that we may immediately toss this in our dry seasonings. Remember that it is very important to do this toss immediately out of the fryer, or else that seasoning isn't really going to stick to your chicken and it'll just sort of settle into the bottom of the bowl instead. This is a pinch each of dried miso powder and dashi powder, followed by the zest of our mandarin orange, and then I'm giving this all a toss to coat. For our plating, I'm starting off by molding a rice ball here using some very wet hands. This is to keep the rice from sticking to my hands while we mold. Then I'm topping my rice with some dried furikake, a healthy serving of our chicken, a side of our orange aioli, and finally a little bit more orange zest to combine, and we're ready to eat. Alright, so as many of you might know by now, this is something like the 6 billionth fried chicken dish that we have done on this channel, which I absolutely have no problem with. More importantly though, I thought that this was also a really fun way of reimagining a really classic dish from Americanized Chinese cuisine. Orange chicken has always been a really fascinating dish to me because honestly, literally nothing about it is Chinese, so figuring out how to rework it into something that's relatively more traditional makes for a very unique challenge. I thought that the acids of our mandarin orange juice paired with the umami of our miso paste complemented in the marinade really nicely. Then to add to this, the orange zest and miso powder that we used in our dry coating makes for a really fragrant and aromatic quality that feels very intuitive to pair with a chicken karaage. Okay, so that's it everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you give this one a shot. For those who are new to the channel, this one is part of a larger series dedicated to reproducing classic Chinese American dishes, including a whole bunch of other stuff from the Panda Express menu, so definitely check out that series next if you haven't yet because there's a lot of these. For the Bay Area locals, the Wu Can Cook pop-up is back at Federation Brewing in Oakland tonight, so come by and say hi then if you can. More about that at wucancook.com/eats. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, be nice to interneters, and I'll see you soon.
I'm just trying to get you high.